What's going on, everyone? This is not a podcast. I don't have a podcast. I just interview interesting people. I like to have a back and forth discussion. I've got Joanna Crowder here, who I met through Rachel online, and her story is amazing. I know like a fraction of it already, and I'm already blown away. So let me see if I get this straight. You have a PhD, and you did your dissertation on syncretism.
Yes.
Okay. Now, are you self taught?
Yes.
See, that's what I think. I think that,
In what way though?
well, in the sense that, like, you went through the educational thing, you went through the educational system, you wrote a dissertation, you did all that. In the sense that you're not just regurgitating what you learned, because um, there is no school for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing. I don't know, how did you manage? First of all, what's it like to go through the schooling system with such an esoteric mind and be able to see just how broken and jagged it is to begin with? And what made you go in that direction?
Okay, so let me back up so that I guess you can kind of see how I got into it. Um
Mm-hmm.
but I mean my life, I mean I guess it's important to know that everybody's story because that's, we all kind of know the same thing, but we all have different stories of
Mm-hmm.
how we got here. Um
Mm-hmm.
I was born into my outer appearance and modeling because my dad was a photographer. So I was born with the camera in my face. They
Mm-hmm.
put me into modeling school. So I was like really into the whole, outer shell. And I
Yeah. Can I
started
jump in
really,
for a sec? For two
yeah,
seconds?
yeah.
I When I was in high school and college, I was an Abercrombie store model, and I was an actor too. So believe me, I know that whole. I'm on
No,
board with you.
we have like a lot of synchronicities. I know. I already know this. Yeah, so I went into makeup artistry. I always loved the art. I always did makeup, and when I found out when I was going to college, I went to NC State for just like a semester, and I found out I'm like, wait a minute, I can go do hair and I can do makeup and I can do all these things I really love to do, and start working. At that time, I was trying to get married because I was like 18, turning 19, and just like ready to go.
Mhm.
Um, and at that point, I decided to get out of state and do hair and makeup. So I started professionally doing makeup for people, and I found myself always being their counselor because they sat there and they started telling me all their insecurities and
Right.
oh, I look horrible because they'd come in there with no makeup on, so they
Was
start
it a studio or were you working for like film? What were you doing?
um different things. I started off at like the mall doing makeup there. Then I
Okay.
went to New York and got certified doing TV and film, fashion and glamour type stuff. So I
Right.
came back and started my own business
Hmm.
doing makeup. And then that was like models, TV people, celebrities that would come into town or whatever, and I'd have to do their makeup. So it was just like really big. And that turned me into doing a lot of fashion shows and
Hmm.
directing and producing the fashion shows. And at that point, I was just going through a rough time in my marriage, and trying to find myself and just going back and forth and back and forth. So it wasn't until fast forward when I had a huge, huge breakup with my husband, um, that I just basically was like, F everything. I had suppressed a lot of things. Um, all of the stuff that when I was young, like the clairvoyance and the dreams and the skills that we have in, that you always get looked at like the black sheep, and you're like, no, there's a lot in me here, but they always saw the exterior and never the interior. So I was always just kind of
Yeah.
fighting to like look at I'm more than just this.
It's the
So I
whole
had
it's the whole Hedy Lamarr problem, right?
it's like there's more to this that meets the eye. So fast forward, I hit the whole dark night of the soul thing, and was just really in the dark. And at that point I had met somebody, and it just like sparked a whole spiritual awakening type thing. I started seeing the numbers 111 and 1111 everywhere.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wait, what happened? Like what? It really blew my mind because I'm like, I'm in the middle of this marriage thing, and now there's this whole, what is twin flames? And so that kind of took me into looking at numerology and spirituality and going, okay, let me go back to picking up the puzzle pieces that I once was doing when I was younger and I had stopped.
Right.
So fast forward, I go and decide to start the University of Metaphysics in Sedona in Arizona. Um, I'm like, they have a school for metaphysics? You mean all the stuff beyond the physical? I get to like I could have a doctorate for this. Um, I did. I jumped in and I got my master's in metaphysical science. And when I had to write my thesis, I thought it was going to be so easy because I'm like, oh, it's meditation, and I'm trying to prove, how daily meditation helps you with this, and that, and um, greater connection to God. But then I had to prove what God was, kind of in a sense, in order to write this. So I was like, wait. Maybe I need to rethink and reread and just, what am I doing? So something that I thought was going to take very little time took me about 18 months. And that's when I kind of found out about Santos Bonacci, Bill Donahue, a bunch of people. And I'm like, hold up, like, let me scratch my beliefs and let me have my mind open and blown
Hmm.
and really go into this. And I'm the kind where I'm going to have discernment of my own. I'm going to pick up the puzzle pieces that I need, or that you know, that I gather in order to see the bigger picture. What doesn't resonate, but I don't judge, the whole person and label them if they have one thing that just I don't resonate with. It's like, that's
Hmm.
their journey. So I've picked up a lot of pieces, and then, I did my master's, it was on meditation, my thesis, and then here comes the dissertation part for my doctorate. And I had met Santos in Miami
Nice.
when he did etymology. He did a whole presentation on etymology, and I flew down there because I was like, oh, I have to. My future self would be so mad at me if I don't go to like, I have to go. So I went. Kind of rewired my brain there a little bit again. And I said, I was going to do it on Kundalini. And I'm like, no, syncretism is everything. Like, no, I don't think anyone's done it. So let me just do that. And at that point, you know how it is. The structure, I'm not a structured type of person. So
Right.
to put it into structured paper, that was the hardest part for me. And then I kind of started with the bubble of, okay, here's syncretism. Now what about it? And so I started putting all the bubbles, like, okay, there's all this information, there's all this information, and I started categorizing it. And then that's where I came up with the whole earth, water, air, fire, like the whole um like
Alchemical.
you said, yes, like an alchemical summary of syncretism, so that I can slowly drip it and have them understand it, because I know that it was so much information. I said, how can I put all of this into something concise that makes sense, that has their little, the Bible says, uh parts, and so annoying. Um and at the end of it, it's like for them to still be able to digest and go, okay, this makes enough sense that we're going to go ahead and pass you.
Hmm.
Um so that's what happened. And I just introduced a lot of layers to their beliefs, I think. And ever since then, I built like my own program, or my own stuff based on this whole way that I did my syncretism
Yeah.
dissertation, like the way that I teach it now, it's all based on this now.
I think that people like us, we're very similar. When I write, and I have 8 books plus a children's book. My
Hmm.
8th book's coming out probably Christmas. It's done already. I wrote the end of my 9th book already. I sent you the video that I did on what is God, and you were like, you liked it, but you were like, I know this already. So I'm like trying to share this with other people. No, it's fine. It's totally cool. But what I do when I write is I open up a Word document on my computer, and if I think of like a funny thing the characters are going to say to each other, because it's basically Da Vinci Code with young wise ass kids stuck in esotericism land. So basically, what I do is I start. If I think of a wise ass comment one of them can say to another, I'll just jot it down. If I see something that blows my mind, I'll jot it down, and then eventually you get like 10 to 15 pages of just these little crib notes. So then what I do is I print it out, and when I feel like I have enough for a book, when I have the idea of a beginning and an ending, I just kind of fill them in. I print out everything, and then I just take a highlighter, and then I'm like chapter one, chapter one, chapter one, and then I just write. I've never had writer's block. 8 books through. I've never had writer's block. I've
That's
never
so
had a
cool.
problem with that. Syncretism is so hard to describe to some people. The best way that I can describe it to people who aren't very familiar with it is that syncretism is basically an amalgamation of a ton of esoteric sciences and seeing how they fit together. Would you agree with that?
I would say it's like the glue of everything, how everything connects
Mm-hmm.
and how, basically how all the stories, all the deeper meanings and the allegories and what they boil down to, like
Yeah.
just that one singularity that
Yeah.
just
What was your so Jordan Peterson has a quote where he says that the pathway to enlightenment is necessitated through a pathway through hell. That's why there's not so many enlightened people. Did you have a pathway through hell before you became enlightened? Did your whole world completely crash like mine did?
yeah. So I ended up writing myself. I'm writing a 4-book series. It's basically the seasons of our lives. But I started off with Spring Manifestation, and it's basically my own story. But
Mm-hmm.
it was like diary format, so you know exactly what was happening. But I based it off on astrologically. So each chapter was based on what was actually happening during Aries season and how those energies were influencing. And so someone who really, really knows astrology can see all those deeper layers of what was happening. So I integrate like my actual life and like, here, let me show you how that has energies of Aries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taurus, whatever. And so that was Spring Manifestation. Then I wrote Summer Love, which I just launched it in the summer. So each one is launched during, spring, summer solstice. The
Of
next one
course.
is,
Yeah.
of course, right? So summer solstice, not the summer solstice, Summer Love is my relationship, really my whole life relationship. And I started off even with like diary entries from since I was 13. But they're all in there and it's my entire like love relationship story. And it basically walks you through my awakening and how that happened and what ended up happening between my husband and I and that whole just
Mm-hmm.
everything. So it's explained there as well. And basically the summer love is your relationship based on astrology. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I did that one and that's 12 chapters and it's my entire relationship, but based on, each sign.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, I'm doing that throughout. The next one is mindfall. So that's going to be more about like in my mind and the whole
Mm-hmm.
psychology and just whatever. And then healing winter will be the other one. So I think that with the same thing you said, like writing, everything just kind of falls into place nicely.
Yeah.
Like my chapters, boom, they come to me easily, like the name of it, and then I write afterwards and it just
Right.
connects.
Yeah.
So
It's like
it's come
Einstein.
really easy.
It's like Einstein. So I'm on Long Island, so I live right near JFK Airport. So this shit happens all the time. Um, Einstein used to say that when he would think on a problem and like focus on it, I always say there's 2 types of thoughts. You have your passive thoughts, which are your thoughts when you're kind of falling asleep, you're drifting in, and then these weird random things come in, and those are your passive thoughts. And I always say that you're not responsible for those. You have to just watch them because that's when people at night, when they try and go to sleep and their mind just races about all the things they've ever messed up with, you're not responsible for those. You have to learn how to see your thoughts pass, okay? Because people can go the ultimate negative distance with those thoughts.
You get
So
attached. Yeah.
you have those passive thoughts, and then you have the active thoughts. Like right now, when I'm trying to think of what to say to you, you have 2 different types of thoughts. Einstein said when he was trying to think of something, the answer didn't come to him. But when he cleared his mind, it just downloaded.
Hmm.
Because there's nothing new under the sun. We're all accessing the Akashic records,
Right.
basically. We're
Right.
all
So
accessing
the creativity that comes with that, like even just the book covers, like whatever it is, it's like it's super flowy. There's no resistance, and I'm like, okay, it's
right,
meant to be. So I don't ever worry about when should I start. I'm like, my intuition will tell me when to start.
right.
What should I write? Nah, my intuition will tell me what to write. Like I'm not worried about it because it's just so effortless.
I do the same thing too. I've got 8 books, and I'm like, what's the next book going to be about? And I'm like, it'll come to me, and it does
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in tune with it. I'm in tune with it now. You've met Santos. You know that I teach for Santos's syncretism school,
Yeah.
astrotheology.
Right.
Um, on my channel, I sent Bill Donahue one of my lectures and he loved it. He just told me he wants me to slow down. But he was like, I
Mm.
love it. It's absolutely amazing. They should teach what you're talking about. I knew Jordan Maxwell, the greats in this field and everything. It's important for people to understand, though, because I get a lot of these people reaching out to me sometimes, and I have an astrologer. And an astrologer should have an astrologer because you can't really do your own work. And just because you're into astrology doesn't mean you know astrotheology and vice versa. They're
Right.
cousins, but just because you know one doesn't mean you know the other. Okay. So
Well, there's
I
so
don't
many
think,
different types too.
yeah, absolutely. So what was if you're comfortable sharing, what was your first aha moment, like where the veil started to peak, where you started to where you were like, there is a whole world out there. Maybe you were a little scared. Maybe you were like Joanna. When I discovered Jordan Maxwell, his one of his videos, I was like, this is really cool. He was talking about how the disciples were going into town. They saw the man with the water pitcher. Women would only carry water. That's Aquarius. That was the first thing I ever heard, and I was like, that's interesting. Found Santos Bonocci. I watched his videos for 6 months. My whole world flipped upside down so bad that I went into a hospital for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I had a complete and total utter paradigm shift and a mind meltdown.
What were
While
you brought up as?
I was brought up as conservative Jewish.
Okay.
Okay, and I never took to it. Even 9 years old, I thought it was. I never took to it. I never understood why. But
Right.
my soul never sat with it. You know. And while I was in the hospital, it was interesting because I'd been watching all of Santos's work, and I started reading the Bible, and I started doing this stuff, and I came up with these ideas. You know those little blue books they give you? Well, of course, you're a doctor. Those little blue books they give you to write your essays in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wrote my first book in the hospital. I had about 30 of those blue books when I left, and I just made them into a thing. 200 rejections later, finally got a book deal. Everything is this and that. But as far as you go, what was your? You have to be broken down to be built back up. In this society, it's everything is built on a lie. In this society, everything is hidden from you. So what was your big moment?
Like which lie basically kind of was like, whoa.
What started the avalanche?
Well, when I was little, I used to have prophetic dreams and then I would start to say things and then they would happen. And I would think that, you're young, so you don't know if am I thinking it and then I'm making it happen or am I seeing something that's in the future?
How young are we
Think
talking?
like 8,
Okay.
8 to 12 or
Yeah.
so. And then, and then
Right.
I started going downhill with like medicine and drinking and all the bad stuff. And that took away
Coping mechanisms for
that's
deep
yeah,
soul.
it took
Deep
away all of those things until I got off of everything. Now I'm like totally
deep
clean.
souls who have things that are missing. That,
Yeah,
that they just crave something so deep that they can't explain. Fill it with drugs and alcohol.
fill the
So
void.
yeah. So I'm sorry. Continue.
Where was I?
You said you were 8 and you started.
Yeah. So the whole I guess what is it? Suppressing it. Yeah, I suppressed it until that moment that I had my meltdown where it was like our final breakup is what we call it.
Mhm.
Um That turned everything upside down for me because I felt like everything that I had suppressed since then, because I had moved from Miami to North Carolina and it was like a traumatic move for me because I didn't want to be here and I was
Mhm.
really upset at my mom for bringing me here, etc.
Mhm.
Ultimately, this is where I met him. I was 16 at the time. He was 19. So it was just wow. I've put all these years, and now like this is what's happening. So everything I had suppressed, I was like, "No, I'm gonna feel it now." This is when I started getting tatted everywhere, and I was like, "No, go ahead, 10 hours. I'll sit here until I passed out." Like, I was just like, "I'll feel everything now. I wanna feel it all." Yeah, and look, all the stuff that is it's like now I teach this, like, in my academy, I'm, like, always going back to the earth, the water, the and this is what it means. Same thing with, right here, I have Matthew 6:22, if thou be single, your whole body shall be filled with light. I have the sine wave up here. I was like, yeah, I'm about to be. everything I represent. And so that's when I kind of started figuring out, okay, you don't always have to just be here in that white side of the yin and yang. Like, I have to embrace all the shadow aspects. I have to embrace everything that I didn't like, that I felt others didn't like, just all that stuff. Find out who I was and then just embrace the wholeness of who I am. Like, I'm both. And I tell people that all the time because they're all like, oh, you're not always love and light. Yeah, not always love and light. Like,
Right.
it's sometimes I'm not. So, but I'm authentic. And that's what you should be. I'm trying to be balanced and sometimes I'm off, but that's life, right? I'm a human.
Mhm.
So it wasn't until then that I really just like, whoa. And then it was when I saw um the whole Jesus thing. It was listening a lot to Bill Donahue and Santos at the same time and really just going, wow, the whole as above, so below, and just really
Mhm.
trying to understand how that was happening inwardly. You know what I mean? That just blew my mind at first. Like, wait, this happens inside of us. So I really went down that whole sacred secretion thing and just really trying to go at it as let me clear up the chakras, let me really try to walk this walk and not just talk the talk, but like do it. And so then that's when I started realizing, man, there's a lot to this. Like, people think like, oh, this is easy. And even, I can do this in a year's time or whatever. And it's like, man, even 15 years later, I'm still like, whoa, I'm so far behind.
Yeah.
There's so much to this. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I answered your question as far as it was the Jesus thing, the astrology, because I loved astrology. I grew up, always. But as far as one thing that really, really blew my mind, I remember watching Santos. Was it the Know Thyself one? It was one that was like
That
eight
was the
hours
one
long.
that sent me off the edge. Know thyself part 2.
Yeah, there's 1 and 2, and it was like 8 hours because I know it was like 4 hours for
Yeah.
something, and it was on repeat, and I was like, "Oh, fuck it, I'll watch the whole thing." So, I would sit there and watch these 8 hours, to the point where I'm, like, watching it now on, like, 2 speed and randomly saying, all the words that he would say, I would just randomly say them, and, I'm like, "Man, this is like, what do I do now with all this information?" Like, my mind's blown, and I had messaged him, and he's like, "Well, start sharing it," and I'm like, yeah, no, because I was really against video and doing lives and starting a YouTube or any of that stuff where I had to speak. Because I felt like I
Mhm.
had been so my whole life that now I was just like scared of it. So then, I went down this path of really trying to overcome that so that I can start sharing everything I knew.
Mhm.
And he was teaching it based on the globe. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing all this research and I'm finishing my dissertation or whatever, I start seeing all the flat earth stuff and the stationary geocentric stuff. And, I'm the kind of person where I'm going to flip every single stone and I'm going to go down every single rabbit hole until I hit something and I realize that there's nothing there or there's more to it.
Mhm.
And so I got onto that and I was like, okay, I'm going to see both sides of things because my moon's in Gemini. I have to see both sides of the story.
Mhm.
Um, and then that 7 years later really blew my mind because after 7 years of really, like, going down that hole, I was like, "Oh, here we go again with something else I have to, like, shed my mind on and
Yeah.
redo my belief systems and, like, try to understand this and then try to syncretize it." And then life has been just uncovering more and more things over and over. So my mind is always blown, but
Yeah,
yeah.
me too. I only try and share stuff that's mind blowing. To be honest, there's stuff that people really don't have access to or wouldn't know. That's basically how I approach it. Um, I would also let's see here. Um, at what point? So you're like me. You're like a sponge, right? You just
Yeah.
soak up all information, and part of part of the conscious intelligence of going down a rabbit hole. Okay, because what happens is when people's mind open up and they start going down rabbit holes, and they're young in that study, they assume that every rabbit hole is real. So a
Mhm.
big consciousness shift in a human being is to be able to go down something and go, this is batshit crazy, this is true. This is
Right.
batshit crazy,
Yep.
this is false. To be able
Yep.
to differentiate what's real or not.
People don't have the time for that. And I'm like, I have to try to understand this because I have a paper to write and things have to make sense to me.
Right.
And I went down like one rabbit hole that's like for 5 years. And then I was like, this is stupid and it's getting me nowhere and it has nothing to do with anything. So um that it was an example to me of like, but now I know. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact
Right.
that I went down that rabbit hole because I see a lot of people going down that rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, whatever. They'll finally understand
Yeah.
that it's going to lead them nowhere.
That's why my book series is called Into the Rabbit Hole, because that's what it is. They're just rabbit holes that people
My
can
place used to be called the rabbit hole, like where I did all my business. So
So,
cool.
at what point do you think, like, you're a sponge? We're a
Yeah.
sponge. We're studying everything. At what point are you able to apply it and
Mm,
and start to see your own unique views and share that with people? Like I've done with astrotheology. I tell people I didn't invent it. I have no
right.
problem saying Jordan and Santos inspired me. I also tell people I don't go down like Bill Donahue or Mark Passio or any of those kind of people, because I don't want to be mind blown by something they say, want to share it, and then have to add someone else. It's these two people that have influenced me. My work aside from that, okay, because I've traced astrotheology to the Epic of Gilgamesh, the
Yeah.
whole thing I broke down, the Quran, the Enuma Elish, the Code of Hammurabi, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've traced this back, and I have full presentations on all this stuff. It's
Hmm.
the oldest, and it's the oldest, and it's the most prevalent one out of all the sciences that are in the Bible. So, at what point were you able to just, I guess, if you're teaching it,
Hmm.
or like I guess you did it with your dissertation, right? Like you put it together, you rearranged.
Okay, so I put it together first there, right? Then I
Yeah.
turned it into let me test the waters and do a webinar, see, who wants to learn this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for like, I don't know, a couple months or so, we were meeting up like live, like with a big huge whiteboard. And I was like, all right, for 2.5 hours, this is what we're gonna break down. And I did it the same way as my dissertation. So I would,
Mm-hmm.
the first earth, 2.5 hours, I would teach them that, water, I would teach them this. And so by the end of that, I was like, okay, cool. Like this has changed people's lives, the way they look at things, etc. So I started a Love Your Life Tribe Facebook group, right? Where I would go in there and start teaching every week based on something of the chakras, like it would be root chakra week. So I'd talk about grounding, whatever. Something that had to do with that. And from there, it turned into a group of us of seven now, 7 people. I represent the crown, my husband's the root, and then I have different people in between. And so we all together, like sharing this, we're wanting to bring that light. We're all lighthouses in our own way. We have a different frequency, a different energy. I have Michelle is all about the heart. She does Reiki. She's all love and light, and she's like healing. Laura's all like nutrition, fitness. We all have our thing, and so together we're like, okay, let's start the QE Academy and start helping people actually not only decondition, right, with the stuff that they thought, because that's part of the process, like removing all the things that we thought we knew
Yeah,
and
they
then
have to unlearn it first, and you have
right,
to be
you have
there
to
for them
unlearn it.
when they basically crash and burn and rise from the ash.
Exactly. And
It's the
they're
story of
just
the
they need
phoenix,
support. Right. They just want like a helping hand because you know how it is. You go
right?
forward and then you're going to go back and then you go forward and you go back. So
Right.
when you go back, sometimes you get stuck in that back part and people get stuck a lot. So I was like, okay, we need some type of academy where or community. So I built, we have this community. And so within it, we have a way for them to go ahead and actually work on themselves, work through this stuff while they learn. So they're
Right.
learning about stuff, they're working through their stuff. They're
Now, when they do that, do they start with the root and work their way up?
yeah,
Obviously, probably, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So that's similar to what I'm doing right now, because what I talk about, I used to think that when I discovered astrotheology, I thought that the Bible was nothing but astrotheology and that it was not literal. I still think the Bible is not literal, but I know that the Bible is also metaphysical, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric mythology. It's also an etymology book,
Numerology.
numerology. It's more than you can learn. And I teach the the astrotheology. I've been doing it 11 years. I've been teaching it for maybe 2.5 now, but I've been studying it for 11 years. Each one of those sciences that I just mentioned requires that much amount of time to be able to break the Bible down. And I've come to realize that is that the Bible is more than you can do in one lifetime, and it's meant to humble you. But like what you did, I don't know if you're familiar with the rapper Truth Seeker.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's a close friend of mine. And we're putting together a team to basically tackle all these sciences in the Bible. We're going to take like the book of Matthew, and then we're going to break it down in all 7 sciences, because I can't do it in my lifetime. You know,
Look. Um, have you heard of her? She broke down the whole Revelation. Kelly
I love,
Marie Kerr. I've had her on my podcast and in my group a couple times. The whole Revelation is broken down in here, like good, like really good.
right. On my channel. I do a astrotheology of Revelation too. I tell people there's nothing to fear. What I tell people that I do is I take away your fear. That's what I tell people. I don't tell people I'm an astrotheologist. I don't tell people, what have you. And what I tell people too is the people on my channel. I say, look, I don't want to call you fans, because fans is short for fanatics. I hope none of you are a fanatic. And I tell people, look, you guys aren't followers, because I'm not a guru. I like to call you guys supporters. So that's what I call my people who subscribe to me. I say, you're my supporters. And my supporters, I just try and bring them mind-blowing stuff, to be honest with you. And um, I will have to check that book out, to be honest with you. But I love what you do. I would love to hear a breakdown of what the 7 chakras, the 7 people do, if you don't mind explaining a little bit, because I want you to also explain what it is that you do at the society.
So basically, like I was all about the whole, syncretism society and everything. I even wanted to go down there. I was like, guys, we're moving to Mexico. And then we were gonna go down there. I even booked an Airbnb and everything. And then all the hurricanes started coming at like telling me don't go, because it was like boom, one after the other. And I'm like, all right,
Right,
okay. So that was that. And so in the meantime, I'm like, well, we still have our community here that we need to do something with, and all this information and knowledge. And I realized that a lot of people, you tell them all this stuff and it's just, they pick up on little things, but the rest is just, right? It's too much.
right,
So I realized I had to break it down smaller and smaller and smaller. So,
right,
like, for example, we have in the academy, so it's basically broken up in tiers, right? We have a community section where I do a lot of workshops. Every 8 weeks we have workshops, and so we all come on there and talk about whatever. The last one was about chakras, so we kind of talked about what they were, how they work, how they are all in the Bible, etc. And that's free. The discussion area is free. The whole book talk part, there's a whole section there. So that's where we have like our community and support part. Then it goes into healing, where we have like tarot Tuesdays, we have Freestyle Fridays. So we have RL, who is the throat chakra, and he has a lot of podcasts. He has Akasha Flix. He's the one that started Akasha Flix, which is kind of like Netflix but more conscious streaming. So he started Akasha Flix. He's more of that voice. So I'm like, be the voice of quantum entanglement. So he's part of our thing, and so he talks about a lot of things there. Um, and then we move on to like level up, and there's like Relationship Tuesday, where my husband and I do things on relationships. We have Wellness Wednesday. Laura talk has plant-based recipes that she puts up, and my husband does some wellness stuff. He did the whole astrology breakdown of the cell salts and how
I just did a
awesome it.
video on that, how depending on your sun sign, you're deficient in 3.
Right.
So I
Mhm.
tell people to get bioplasma. Yeah, no, I was gonna bring that up in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, we
So,
have like the whole book, and we've studied that, for because I bought that back when I was doing my man. I bought so many books when I was doing my papers. It was ridiculous. Every week there was a new book and another book and another book. So he's more of the science guy. So he was breaking down like the whole cells, and just
mhm,
starting up with RAM, and just everything.
right,
So he does that in Wellness Wednesday. We have Theology Thursdays, where we go over the parallel sayings of Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Lao Tzu. And so kind of showing everybody how, look, it's all the same. Everything is the
right,
same. They're all saying the same stuff. Like, look at all these parallels. And slowly, like, they're like, it's been almost a year and they're like, whoa, I'm starting to get it now, like
Yeah,
blown away because of the
yeah,
repetition. And then my favorite is metaphysical meanings. And this is what I teach on Sundays. And that's where I go over stuff in the Bible that is basically like, let's tell you what it really means. Like things like father and mother. And I'm like, okay, father really means this, mother really means that. So what it's really saying is blah,
right.
blah, blah. Right. And we just finished the story of Moses and how it basically is taking you through all the elements, like the levels of consciousness. And I'm like, do you see now? Like the Noah and um the one that Jonah and all these things that have the three and have the same earth, water, air. It's
Yeah.
all the same thing. So they're starting to get it too. So we're just starting a whole watch party of the last 45 episodes. So, we're just really breaking down everything, but in different areas. You know what I mean? It's like different little
Yeah.
departments of the whole school. So,
Right. That's amazing. People always find it amazing when, because you have the Jehovah's Witnesses. Santos was a Jehovah,
yeah.
and in Revelation, you talk about the 144,000 people that get to be saved. When you tell them that that's the accumulation of the chakras, they don't know what to do with themselves.
Right.
It's absolutely, it's incredible. I try and
Or a Jew is one who goes inwardly, and it's like, what? What?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really amazing. You know what I try and explain to people who watch my videos is that you can have loved ones, you can have children, you can have parents, you can have cousins, you can have friends. At the end of the day, we're all on our own soul journey. Okay, so what you do is you better yourself, you change yourself, and then people will take notice who want to change themselves, and if they do, they do. But at the end of the day, you have to accept people for their own soul journey. And you're very lucky in the sense that you and your husband can share that.
I mean, our thing is change yourself, change the world, because we
Yeah,
know that when you do the work, it causes a ripple effect, and it could be
but
small, but that small is just going to keep growing. So
it is.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it is. It's absolutely. Oh, it's an incredible feeling. Um, Let me see. What can I ask you? I think.
Take a break.
Sorry. Um, so where would you like to go with all this? I don't mean this interview. I mean like literally like with your society. Do you have like plans? Do you have like how would you like to expand it? Would you like to?
I definitely, of course, like we started it last November, so I feel like we were testing out, like, the systems, like, does this work? Does the flow work? And then we started, was it in January 11th, I think? The mastery course, which is where you go through your own, journey. And so, like, I have my own program, 3-month program, and I said, let me put this in the academy so that they could do it at their own pace, and
Mm-hmm,
that way, they're still doing the work, but just on their own time. And that's been the best, just seeing how people, as they move up,
mm-hmm,
we meet every time they move up, and I open up the next one and they get in there, and it's like, oh,
mm-hmm.
all this work they have to do, but you see their changes. And so I'm inspired every freaking day when I get a message and it's like, oh my God, I just realized this and I had an aha for that. Or when we meet up, it's like everything
I
is
get those all the
magical.
time too. Yeah,
It's
I get those
magical,
all
it's synchronized. Like I think of something, boom, it happens. Like I was telling you earlier, like I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, so are we gonna meet in Zoom, or is he gonna send me a stream? Oh, he's sending me a StreamYard. Oh, I love StreamYard. And then I was like, let me actually check. And I look on my phone and you had just sent me a StreamYard. And I was like, oh, I felt it. So everything is just kind of, I flow, you
the
know?
time. It's hard to explain to people this, but like let me give you an example. I have my 7 books are out right now. My fourth book that I wrote in 2017. Okay, I wrote this in 2017. Was the story. So I'm gonna give you the background of the story. There's a jellyfish in Japan called the Irakanju jellyfish. Okay, when it stings you, unlike other jellyfish, one of the things it leaves you with is an impending sense of doom, to the point where you you want to kill yourself. It's like Bird Box in a sense, if you've ever
Mm.
seen that movie. Okay. So what these elites did was they took this protein from this jellyfish and they weaponized it and put it in the global flu vaccine. And I wrote this in 2017. I also wrote later on about something happening to the Georgia Guidestones, something happened to Salman Rushdie. I talk about the upcoming people don't understand is that when you're in tune with things, you know, I sound crazy to most people,
Of
but
course.
the things that I've been predicting come true, and it's because I'm in tune with everything. Because the Akashic records, they're outside of space and time. So you just reach into them,
I'm
and
always like, if your Wi-Fi signal is strong, you pick
yeah,
up on everything.
you just get it. You ever get a thought out of nowhere, and you're like, "Wow, I can really do a lot with this." Where
Yeah.
did the thought come from? It just enters your head. It's not like you're not watching a movie about something and then you're like thinking about something related to it. No, it's just a random thought that comes in your head that could change everything.
Hmm.
It's hard to explain to people, but you have to clear yourself, to be honest. And I tell a lot of people, I say the best thing that you can do for yourself, the best things that you could do. Well, I tell them three things, okay? Because people are like, answer. Well, I can give you a couple answers. If you're not into meditation, or if you can't calm your thoughts, just buy a candle, light it, and stare at the flame for half an hour. Do that in the morning. Do that at night. It'll change your blood pressure. It'll open up your third eye. It's a million different things.
Like sun gazing, yeah.
Sun gazing, exactly. The other thing you got to do is completely quit alcohol. I don't
Hmm.
know. I tell people alcohol is it brings you down to your reptilian midbrain. Okay, because think about it, it's your basic instincts. When you're drunk, you want three things: you want food, sex, and sleep. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you care about. So get rid of alcohol. And then the other thing I tell people to do is stop masturbating.
That's why
That's what
it's legal.
yeah, that's why it's illegal. Yeah, everything in this world is to guide you away from things that'll raise your charisma. We're very powerful. We are so powerful.
And
And
just those 3 things, how hard is that for most people,
well,
right? Like,
yeah,
super.
yeah, it's but when I tell people to do those three things, I say, message me in 4 to 6 months. Oh my God, my life completely changed. Like it's like you're looking at it's like you've evolved. It's absolutely insane. Do you have any personal spiritual practices that you do, or any little um what do you call them? Just little things that you do. Do you light candles? Do you light incense? Do you sage? Do you do any of that kind of stuff?
I we go through all these levels of, learning, unlearning, whatever, and using tools, etc. And I used to use a lot of the tools as I was learning about it. And then I started just understanding that it's all within us and that we don't really have to use the tools, or we can use the tools in our head, or,
Hmm.
I can make it my intention and set it. And that's that. Um, so I do meditate. That is the one thing I make sure everybody knows and has heard. And if you've heard me talk, I've always ended it with, you need to go and meditate.
Hmm.
Um, Seek first the kingdom. The kingdom is within you. It's like all there, all the information's there. So I'm always about meditation. Other than that, I do use them sometimes. I might sage here and there. I love candles, but I don't feel like I need it. It's more of like the icing on the cake, like,
Yeah, well,
just
that's
for
how I figured as much. I
the
figured,
earth side of me wants to use it, but the spiritual side knows it doesn't need it?
one of the quotes that I always share, it's in my books, it's in my presentations, is a quote from a guy called John Dominic Crossan when he's talking about the Bible. And it says, it's not that um, the people that wrote it, what is it? What is it? It's not that the people that wrote the Bible um, wrote it literally. No, fuck. I have to get the quote. Hold on.
You're like, I want to not mess this up.
I want to not mess this. No, it's profound. Hold on.
Yeah, once you get to the point where you're like, I have no idea, you're like, no, I need to figure this out.
I usually know this, but I haven't said it in a while. Okay, so here's what he says. He says, my point once again is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally.
Exactly. It's like the more you uncover and the more you see and connect the dots, it just makes more sense versus like the life before when things didn't make sense. You know what it was? I remember when my daughter was young. This was right before my whole Dark Night of the Soul thing. And you're trying to be like, I'm a stay at home mom. Like, how can I be a good mom and be a good stay at home, whatever? Um, so I started showing her the Bible. I started from the beginning and I started reading it and I'm going, hold on. And I'm looking at it now from like a different point of view and I'm going, wait, I need to know what the hell this is saying actually if I'm going to be teaching it to her. Um because the way I was looking at it now was like not making sense. Like, okay, snakes don't talk, obviously, blah blah blah. This has to be symbolic, right? So it's like my mind started to have that curiosity kick in because I'm like, I need to know what it is that I'm teaching my kids. My mom wanted to do the whole, baptize them and go down that whole
Yeah.
Catholic thing. And I remember baptizing them when they were a baby, but then after that I was like, why do I keep following what everybody else is telling me to do? I don't want to do this. I don't go to church. I don't do these
Mhm.
things. So um I think it was when, having your own children, you go, okay, what do I want to pass on? Like, do I want to pass on the same thing that has been passed on to me out of tradition because it was an unconscious thing, or because I truly want to pass on, knowledge, wisdom, information that's like things I want to really learn. That's what I want to teach them. So
But
um,
to me, see, to me, I thought about this, and my friend told me one thing because my friend is just as open as I am about everything. He gets more into like the Anunnaki and all that kind of stuff. He reads Sumerian and stuff. Um, but what he told me is he's putting his daughter through Catholic school, right? And I'm like, why would you do that? Because the Bible's astrotheology, it's all this stuff. He goes, you give them that foundation so they can see what everyone's doing. And then when they're old enough, you teach them the truth.
it's like the
Because
Santa Claus story.
that aha moment that they get when they like it's I can't tell you how many people just leave mind blown comments on my thing. I love reading that, but it's kind of like I'm just trying to reach people and I'm just trying to get this information out there. But like when they have their awakening, they evolve into this kind of person who no longer can just deal with bread and circuses. They become this kind of person who get really pissed off when they don't know something. And that's where you want to be. Because I hate not knowing things. That's part of my whole thing. Is that I try and read I've got more books that I have to read.
What sign are you?
I'm September 26th. I'm a Libra, cusp Virgo, Taurus moon, Aquarius rising.
Aquarius rising. That's where it is. Okay. I'm an
Yeah.
Aquarius rising too. I was like, that sounds very Aquarius like. The
Yeah.
whole rebel, the
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're a Gemini moon, right? So we're right next to each other.
Gemini moon, Aquarius rising, and Leo sun.
Leo, nice. Very cool.
Hmm. I
I
like my
love it.
combo because I'm a Leo, so who wouldn't?
I actually have it on my arm.
Oh, nice. I was thinking about doing that.
Do it. Take my idea. It's fine.
Yeah, I ended up getting the golden ratio and then the hexagram thing.
I see it. Nice. Fantastic.
They
So,
keep coming, so who
yeah.
knows? You know how it is with hats once you start.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, what kind of books do you read? I'll tell you what I have right now.
Oof,
I have
everything.
I have two books. I just made a video of Way of the Peaceful Warrior. By the way, I told people to get it. I don't know if you ever read it.
Mm-mm.
You should. It was the first book I ever read. It was from Dan Millman. It's an amazing spiritual journey. The other two books that I'm in the process, I have them. I just have to read them. Is The Alchemist
Mm.
and Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So
I was started to read The Alchemist, but then I stopped.
It's a short book. I could probably read it like in the bathroom, to be honest.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely
That's what
want to.
happened with me with the tree of the book. What is it? The Tree of Knowledge. What is it? It's the little short one that's small, but it's like amazing. From George Carey. What was it called?
Didn't George Carey do the Cell Salts book?
He also did that one, but there was another one that was smaller. Anyway, I read it all in the bathroom and I was like, wow. I couldn't put it down, so I was like, my legs are numb. It's crazy.
So, what books are you? What's your next book that you're gonna read?
I mean, I'm still kind of breaking this one down, the elevation one,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's so deep and there's just so much. So I keep going back
What
into
kind of a
that.
breakdown is it? Is astrotheological or?
It's kind of both. It's that and as above, so below, like both. So she goes over like the different meanings of each thing in the beginning, and then the Hebrew like words, but then she breaks down each of the actual verses. Like,
Yeah.
here's the verse, here's the interpretation, here's the verse. Yeah.
When I tell people that
So
the Hebrew language is a code, it's not actually a language; it's a code. And I tell people that
of light.
the Bible, exactly, the Bible was supposed to be one long strand. It wasn't supposed to be broken up into chapters, this and that. It's supposed to be one long strand. It just broke up into a Bible because you can't have like a freaking. Do you know what I mean? You can't
Yeah,
have.
yeah. It's like the alphabet pretty much. Like, you know how you have the alphabet and
Right,
it starts, beta and then ends in like at the end, whatever. But it's
right.
abracadabra, and then you have the lumen in the middle, and then have the
Mhm.
Christo at the end. So you have the male, the female, and then the power. And it's like that's everything. That's like light right there. Like that's electromagnetism, like
That's Walter Russell right
that's
there.
the alphabet
Everything.
right
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
like what?
Wow.
No, all this stuff just I live it, I breathe it. It fascinates me. I always want to learn more of it. Like it's I mean, I got my doctorate in philosophy, so I'm like a philosopher. I have to like learn. I have to study life, right? I have to interpret
Mhm.
it with my moon and Gemini. But then at the end of the day, it's like I love patterns. I love putting together puzzle pieces. Down to like the mundane dishwashing.
Yeah.
Like you put it in the dishwasher, it has to have a pattern, like that's
Right.
just how my brain works. So that's how I look at everything. And then when I read people, I can just pick up on the patterns. I could pick up on their energy. What are the mirrors? What are they projecting, et cetera. And then just kind of go, okay, here's the blockages. Here's what they got to do. So it's kind of like the counseling side of me, especially
Mhm.
with growing up doing makeup on people and counseling them and seeing all these things. It kind of helped me build that foundation to now metaphysical counseling, where I incorporate all of syncretism and then all of this spiritual side, the healing side of things, and bridge it together and like show people how to do it themselves. I'm always like, okay, they come to me with a problem. I'm like, but did you meditate first? Like, have you meditated? Like, have you gone to God? Because can help you way more than I can, but it's always like have you meditated? Have you meditated? And
Mhm.
then I'm just like here's some validation, or how can I help you? How can I be of service? But other than that, everybody has the answers within themselves.
It's true.
So we
It's
always have
true.
to guide them back to themselves.
Right. So what I usually try to do with people who are new, I get messages, I get DMs from people who are like, please make your best case for what you're talking about. I'm terrified of going to hell, and that breaks my heart. So I spend half my time explaining to people what hell is, explaining to people what things like Baphomet, Satan, Lucifer are, and I do this in my video. You have to take that fear away first before someone can learn, because what they're going to do is they're going to find something and be like, oh, that's interesting. Nope, Satan's doing it. They're
Right.
gonna pull that.
Hmm.
They're gonna pull that. Um, so I've been doing videos. I sent you the video today about what is God, and I make the case that everything is God because nothing exists outside the infinite. And then I talk about the fact that if you're if you have a child like you do, they're half of you, but you experience them subjectively. That's kind of how what God is with us and everything.
Right.
When did you have your I am God moment?
I don't know, because I came into this world this lifetime kind of really knowing this stuff truly. Like I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time by myself, and this whole connection I always felt that I can like that I had. It was this like knowing, this clear knowing, like just the whole claircognizant thing. Um that's always, and I feel like everybody has always seen that in me and kind of gone the other way because they know that I know it. So that's hard to answer because I feel like it's always been there, and it comes
Yeah.
across to people, of course, as arrogant or, you
No, you're
know,
just an old soul. People just don't understand the language.
right. And it's just like, no, I just know. Like, um,
Okay, let me
yeah,
rephrase. When
please.
were you able to put it into words?
Probably recently, like this year, like last year, or when I was, no, when I started my book. So yeah, around 2020, 2021,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around then.
Right. I started my awakening when I was 30.
Yeah, it
And
was 2012 when I started my
me too.
awakening. Yeah. That's kind of like a
2012,
huge year for, so many
2012.
reasons.
Oh yeah, 2012. And that was literally the year that I wrote my first book. That was the year that I started awakening. I was 30. You're talking about Saturn's return. It plays a
Yeah.
huge role. Um, it's just really really great stuff.
I just know that like when you first start in the awakening journey, and I've seen this so much, is like we all do this. We get so like, whoa, right? Like now I have the veil's been lifted and now I have all this information, and they as an us feel like, oh, I know everything now, right? And it's like, nah, man, you're still kindergarten. Like now there's the whole nother level of
No,
this that.
now you're reborn.
Right, so it's like you still have so much more to go, and I say that with myself as well, not just, but I say that with people that, like, first awaken and they feel like they know it all, right? And it's like, "Oh, man, you still have so much more to go,"
Yeah,
and you get to a point where you're, like, totally isolated, like, I don't I have my community, I have my group, I have all that, but other than that, it's me in Publix and back. Like, that's it.
yeah. You know what? I find this. I was able to put this into words, and I sent you this in the video. I talk about when you first awaken spiritually, and even when you realize that even the religious people, they say God is infinite. That's their claim. Well, nothing exists outside of the infinite. Everything is infinite. Then you start reading things like Thomas, where he says, "Split a piece of wood, and I'm there."
Mhm.
Turn over a stone, and you'll find me. Or in Luke, when he says, "The kingdom of God is inside you," it literally is. And when people first realize that, and they get that like warm love, like wash over them, that is the
Mm.
same exact feeling that Christians get when they're saved. Only now they're in a fear based system with God.
Right.
And my problem with religions is that it separates God from us. That's where I am right now.
I mean, I know there's a good and a bad for everything, right? There's religion is there for those that are way, way in the dark, and it's helping them get the light. I feel like it becomes a problem when they feel like that's all there is to it. But Hebrews
Yeah,
6:1 says, move on from the doctrines and all these laws and all this stuff and move on to perfection. And so it's like, that from there on, you can leave the doctrines, you can leave the church and
right.
move on to the church of yourself, because your body is the temple, and start really going inwardly, because that's not really what they're showing you when you go there, right? So it's kind of like it's baby steps, right? Like the journey of learning the stuff, like you said, like, oh, Catholic, I know all this stuff, but then now it's like, aha. And I
Yeah,
wanted to tell you my aha that I remember.
yeah,
It was back in 2001, and I had just gotten married, and I had this dream where we were in a truck and we hit, those bridges that come up.
yeah.
Right when they're coming up, the truck hit the bridge, and then instantly everything turned white. And so not only did it turn white, it was like I was in light and I was a part of
Right.
that light. And it was this warm, super unconditional loving feeling where I felt like I saw everybody there, but everybody was clear and light. And so you can feel their presence, but you can't see them, but they're there. And so it was like this pure like soup of light of unconditional loving feeling, and I woke up crying, wanting to go back to that and going, I need to go back to sleep. I want to go back to that. And then it was like this forever feeling of wanting to go back to that feeling of like
Right.
that was God. Like I freaking died. I fucking went to the light and I want to go back to that because there's nothing like that unity
Right.
feeling. And I've never been able to describe it in any way as the way that it truly felt. I even tried to incorporate it in my book, but nothing can truly describe that feeling,
No.
honestly. And that is what was
That's
like
why
the carrot.
that's where art comes in.
Yes, because
That's where art,
you try to like explain it, you try to,
no, it's got to be painted.
but
You ever see the movie?
exactly.
You ever see the movie Contact with Jodie Foster? It's about the
Yes. Yes,
okay,
yes, with the thing in the circle.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when she goes up and she's in Nibiru or in the next realm, she says they should have sent a poet. So I think about that from time to time.
That's funny.
Um, there's two passages in the Bible. The first one that I talk about is, I forget where it is. I just did a video on it too. This is embarrassing. But it says, trust in God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And I just think that's like the worst thing that has ever been, that people just take that and they throw it at you. And it's kind of like, no, you have no idea what you're missing. Like this whole world will open up. Like you can read the stars.
And I think it's because they don't understand that God is within them,
Right.
Like, once you know that God is within you, well, then the sparks, the inspiration, the seek
Mm-hmm.
and you shall find, the questions of curiosity that come up, like, those are things for you to follow. Those are trying to show you the way, trying to realign you, like just like
Yeah.
the Mazzaroth does.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just the interpretation of God that's been very misleading.
Yeah. That's the
As if it's
problem.
outside of us. Anything that we feel like is outside of us that we need to wait for, that's gonna say, "Come and save us," or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's a trap, right? It's like it's an everlasting, this treasure hunt of.
The other the other one that I like to talk about is
You froze. And it's still live. Sorry, guys. I don't know what he was saying. And just in case it's still recording, I'm talking. What's up? Let's see if he's going to come back in. It's Mercury retrograde. We got 6 planets retrograde right now. So, that's messing with us. Man. There you go.
there we go. Okay. So all right, good. It's still working. Thank God. All right. So what I was gonna say is
Yeah.
Isaiah 45:7. I, the Lord, create the light and the darkness. I create the good and the evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Nothing exists outside of that. Now, try talking to a religious person and tell them that evil is a part of it. When you truly understand that, you know, everything is a part of God, that includes Hitler. As an example, when you can explain that to someone and they not go off the deep end, then you have something there.
Right. Made me think of yesterday because I saw this little bug and it was upside down. And I went in and I was like, oh, I know God is in there. So I was like, let me flip it.
I do
And
that
then
too.
I'm like saving it. And then, of course, my mind's like, what if it was a snake and it was in my house and it was going to attack? Then what? Like,
Yeah.
then what? Because, the whole thou shalt not kill. And I'm very like, don't kill it. But then I'm like, well, what about that?
Well, I
So,
also talk about in one of my videos, I talk about the fact that trees have an underground system where they talk to each other. That if an acorn falls from a tree and it knows it's its offspring, it'll favor that. That trees, if they're friendly with one another, they stay out of the light from one another. I talk about Masaru Emoto's water experiments, right? Where you're talking about intention, and we're 75% water.
yeah, it's
Maybe
like the
90.
movie Avatar, they're all communicating, like
Yeah.
they're conscious. Like, I think
Everything
that's
is
what we'll
one.
be when we're back in the golden age.
Everything is one, yeah. Unless we have to do this again, but I don't want to do this again.
No. Who does?
I've had enough. Joanna, thank you very, 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 very much for coming on. This was amazing.
You're welcome. You're
And
so welcome. Thank you.
please tell everybody where they can find you. And I'm going to be doing, I think, what are we doing it in a week? I think.
Yeah,
On
next
your
week.
channel. Have you seen my astrotheology presentation?
I think so. The one that's like yeah, that
The
you go over
spreadsheet, yeah.
each breakdown, like
Yeah.
the ramp. Yeah.
So I'm gonna do that on your channel. So tell everybody where they can find you.
So, JoannaCrowder.com would be the easiest because from there you can get to everything else. You can get into the quantum entanglement website because that's a whole website within itself, and all my social medias are there. So, yeah, JoannaCrowder.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank
And
you.
I'm gonna put this up right away.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.